Hi folks, this is Goro Radio Moscow here again with another beer review. As I said in my previous video, I also have the Dunkel beer, which comes also from the Zwiebel Brauhaus in Soest in Westphalia. As you can see, just with this label, I'll just get it a bit better here. It's a similar portrait to the last one, an open door with the darker beer in the glass sitting during a nighttime portrait. These are quite nice little portrait style breweries. As I said in the last video, I'll talk a bit more about the brewing process in this one because it's very interesting. And like I say, you can book group tours where you get to meet the master brewer and try the Helles and the Dunkel beer in the brew house itself. Now, both of these beers are brewed using the German purity law of 1516, and this means that the beer can only contain hops, malts, yeast and water. And both the Helles and the Dunkel beer, which I will review and have reviewed, blah blah blah, they're both unfiltered, they're not stabilised or pasteurised, and they're both 4.9%, which my good friend tells me that is very typical for Germany. And I also have to acknowledge him in this video because he was very good and went through the translating work for this particular brewing process with me, because the website's all in German. I'll put the website link in the description for the video as well as a link to the Helles beer if this is the first one you're watching. But I'll just chat a little bit now about the brewing process for this beer because it's very interesting. Now, when it comes to beer, you make the malt from barley, and in the Zwiebel Brauhaus process, it is cleaned and dried for storage for a 48-hour period, and the final barley mix they make is 45 to 48% water. Now, the enzymes in the barley break down the stabilising substances in the grain, and then this mixture, after this happens, is dried to 60 and 70 degrees, and this reduces the water content to 2 or 3%. And at this stage, the malt is then ground, and each batch of the beer has a freshly ground batch of malt. And then the roasting process after this is where it determines whether the beer is going to be dark like the Helles beer, dark like the Dunkel beer, or light like the Helles beer. It's usually due to the amount of roasting time that you give it that determines how light or dark the beer is. Now, after this stuff is roasted, water is added to the barley to reactivate the enzymes, and then a thing called Mek-ju, that the Germans call Mek-ju, is produced. Now, the Mek-ju enzymes turn starch into sugar, and after you do this, the solid and liquid components of this mixture are separated with a sieve, and then you have a clear sort of malt and sugar solution, and then this is cooked with the hops for a period of 70 minutes, and this makes the beer become bitter. And at this stage, you have what is called the Stammwürze. Now, this is very important in German beer, as my friend tells me, and the Stammwürze is the ratio of hops, malt and sugar in the solution at this stage. And this is the beer statistic that is seen on better German beers, and you'll see that the Stammwürze, the higher the Stammwürze, the higher the alcohol content in the beer. And if you look on the Zwiebel Brauhaus, where it describes the other beers that I was talked about in the previous video when I told you about the products, you'll see there that the Stammwürze, which is you'll see is the bigger numbers around 12, 13, 14 next to the alcohol content, which is usually around between 4.9 and 6ish. You'll see that that number that you see is the Stammwürze, the ratio of hops, malt and sugar in the solution at this stage. But after this, the yeast is added to the Stammwürze, and now the yeast will turn the sugar from the malt into alcohol, and the temperature of this process depends on the type of yeast, and this is usually 8 to 12 degrees, and this is typical of bottom fermented beers. And it's like Helles and Dunkel beers are bottom fermented beers, and Weiss beers are top fermented beers. I'll talk about that a bit later in some stage because it can go into quite a bit of detail as to how exactly they achieve that. But when you have the process of the Stammwürze and adding the yeast to it, the temperature for this is 8 to 12 degrees. And the process will continue where the sugar in the beer is used up until there's only 1% left. 1% of the sugar left in the solution, and this is left to create the resident or remaining carbonation that you get in the beer, because CO2 is the byproduct of the sugar conversion that you see during this process. So they leave 1% in to actually give the beer some of the carbonation. But then after this, the beer is placed in clean storage tanks for 3 weeks, where it matures. But now that I've spoken about the brewing process, you can take a look at the Zwiebel Brauhaus website yourself. But let's get on to tasting this particular beer itself. As you can see, as I showed you earlier, this is in another litre bottle of beer that's an absolute monster compared. Like I said in the last video, I thought these were going to be half litres of beer. But let's just get this opened up, and yeah, this one goes with a bit more of a bang. Nothing on these little caps here, as I forgot to mention in the last video for the Hella beer. Well, let's just get this guy poured out. This will be a bit darker than the last one. You have to be very careful with these litre bottles. They're a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. It's cool having this amount of beer, but it can be a bit of a pain at the same time. As you can see, it's a very... I'll just lift it up for you in a sec. Just get this guy put away. These litre bottles really are a bit of a pain in the arse. But yeah, I'll just lift this up for you. As you can see, this one is a hell of a lot darker. It's a very nice kind of reddy brown, I would say, very reddy brown colour with a nice big head on it, typical of German beer, like I said in the last video. This one, from what I can see, has a little bit more carbonation in it than the Helles did. Let's just get a little smell of it. It's kind of... this one smells a lot more roasty. It does actually smell kind of similar to the Helles beer, and there's a hint. It's very roasted and the malty. You have the breadiness to it again. There's some hints of like dark fruit and caramel, I would say. I forgot to say, of course, this sort of brown beer that you get, brown colour rather, is very typical of the dark Dunkel beers. But like I say, it's very roasted, dark malts. There is a little bit of a sweetness at the end of when you smell it, that resembles the kind of like darker fruits and things like that. There is a little bit of caramel into it. Let's have a good taste. This one, like I say, this one is a little bit more on the mouth. You can taste the carbonation in it a bit more. It's a little bit not so zippy, but you feel the carbonation on the tongue. This one to me is a bit more watery. It actually, strangely enough, it tastes a bit lighter than the Helles beer. You can taste some... you can taste the roasty and bready malts in it. The dark fruits I'm not really getting from it. There is a little hint of caramel. This one's a lot smoother, I would say, than the Helles, which is odd. I remember tasting this in the Brauhaus. Maybe it's different from being in the bottle to the tap. In the Brauhaus, it tasted to me, you could taste a bit more. It was a bit heavier going than the Helles beer. Yeah, it's very, very, very smooth, kind of medium-bodied. It's a little dry, actually, I would say. The carbonation is a bit more noticeable, as I said. I'm getting some caramel and kind of malted bready notes. I'm not really getting any of the dark fruits in it, which I can smell. I'm not quite sure about that, actually, but this one, personally, it's a bit strange. Like, when I've had this on the tap in the Brauhaus, I personally preferred the Dunkel to the Helles, but in the bottles, I would say the Helles is actually the tastier beer, I would say. But these bottles all have a sell-by date on it. I'll just check. These are both... this one goes out of date on the 15th of October in 2013, and the Helles one goes out on the 1st of October, which is a little bit strange. On tap, I would say, if you make the trip to Soest, which I recommend, I would say go for the Dunkel. but I would say in the bottle it seems to be that this Dunkel beer isn't as good as on the tap. So I would say it's kind of, again, it's a nice-ish beer. It's not too spectacular. Definitely give it a try. I would recommend. It's quite difficult to try. I would want to try the Weizen. Maybe that would be a bit more, have more of a resemblance to the bottle. The hell tastes like as it does on tap as it does in the bottle, but this one to me tastes a little bit different. But it's a good beer. It's nice and it's enjoyable. It's very drinkable. Give it a try if you get the chance. There's a lot of nice German beers. The Zwiebel Brauhaus is a very good brewhouse because it's in a very quaint little German town. It's kind of like old Germany, not sort of modern Germany as you see it. But definitely give it a try. See what you think of it. Let me know. I prefer this one on tap over the Helles beer. But thanks again for watching my beer reviews. This one's been a bit more of a ramble, to be honest. But definitely please subscribe to the videos, like them, let me know your own thoughts on the beer, recommend beers, just do what you do on YouTube. But thanks again for watching, and I'll be back soon with another German beer for you pretty soon. Okay, cheers.